Well, let us get underway with our special webinar for CMC-Global Institute. My name is Dwight Mahowitz. I'm the past chair of the Institute, and I'm just delighted today to introduce you to Kevin Schwenker. Sorry for pausing on your name there, Kevin. Introducing Kevin Schwenker, who is world-renowned as an expert in these areas. He's agreed to put on some professional development programs for us, which I'll get to in a minute. But I was looking at some of the reviews from some of the people that have taken his courses, and I thought I'd read three of them to you. One of them, this is a very, very strong course. The second one from an individual, Kevin's a great coach who submerged the participants into real-life situations. And this third one I loved. I am still buzzing with how much my expectations were exceeded. So there's no question, Kevin, that you bring great value to consultants that attend your sessions. We have made agreements with Kevin to provide courses to Institute members. One is on the essentials of management consulting. It starts in late February, February 20th, and that one is 6 separate sessions over 3 months. And then beginning early in February, there's also the opportunity for the ethics course, and Kevin will be talking about both of those today. So our session today really is a sneak preview of the kind of material that he will be covering off, and it will have great value in its own right, but it will give us additional insight into what we can learn from these upcoming professional development courses. If you have any questions during the program, please do set up a chat. I'll be monitoring that, and Kevin will answer any questions at different points throughout the webinar. So with that, I hand it over to you, Kevin. Welcome, and thank you very much for doing this with us today.
All right, Dwight, thank you very much. I think I'd pause over your last name as well.
The trouble is, I know how to say yours, and I still fumbled on it.
Well, listen, welcome to all those watching this live and in the recording. This first slide that I have up, quality is not an act, it's a habit. And one of the things that we go into in the Essentials of Management Consulting is a quality, repeatable process that professional management consultants use around the world. And as you say, I'm renowned globally. I actually have traveled around the globe. I've taught this program in Europe, in India, in Australia, in New Zealand, through the United States and across Canada. So it's been widely, it's in use widely around the country. So I just want to go through the 5 stages in the consulting process and talk about the tools, techniques, and skills that are required in each one of these. And this is, as Dwight mentioned, a preview of the Essentials of Management Consulting that will be coming up starting in February. So by the end of this seminar, you're going to have a quick idea of the purpose of each phase, the type of activities, deliverables, tools, and techniques in each one of these phases, and hopefully be interested in learning more about the consulting process. So here's our agenda. We're going to go through the 5 stages as they show in here. And we're going to talk about the purpose, key activities, key deliverables, tools, and techniques. I'll finish off with a few comments about the bottom line and why we followed this process, and then answer any questions you may have. The roles are as instructor facilitator and participants who are expected to provide some input through asking questions. And the rules are just mute yourself, put your phones on stun in the background, try not to multitask, take some notes, actively participate, ask any questions, and we will finish on time in at 1600 UTC. So for those of you who have not seen my training before, this is the first thing we talk about is, if you take nothing else away from today, how to organize a successful meeting. And I mean, how many times have we gone to a meeting that we don't know why we're there? What is the purpose? What is the outcome? What are we supposed to achieve at this meeting? If there's no outcome, why are we meeting? What's the purpose? So the agenda is how we get to that result. And so that's why we set up an agenda, is to achieve a particular outcome. The roles are to have the right people in the room to make the decision and achieve the outcome. So it's the stakeholders. Who's required to be in the room? Is there somebody required from finance or from IT or from another part of the organization? Is it other partners that need to be in the room? Because if they're not all in the room, how can we reach a decision? How can we achieve the outcome? So we should never have a meeting where all the stakeholders are not there that are required to achieve the outcome. And of course, the rules are, how are we going to have an effective meeting? So if we're online, we talk about muting yourself when you're not speaking. Introduce yourself when you talk, especially if you're on a teleconference and we can't see your face and we don't know exactly who's speaking. So that's what those are for. All right, let's get through the stages. The first stage, of course, is entry. Now, this is one we normally don't get paid for. Some of us might consider it marketing. And what's the purpose of this phase? Well, what we're trying to do here is build a relationship, establish our credibility, identify the context, the purpose, the scope, the timeline, the budget. These are key things that we need to know in order to write a proposal to win the consulting assignment. In order to do that, we need to earn the client's trust, right? And then we decide whether we're going to secure the work or not. Now, in an initial entry meeting, you're not likely to earn the work immediately. Sometimes we get lucky and they say, we're going to go with you. But we also want to decide whether this is a client we want to work with. Because there's sometimes I've gone into meetings and walked out of the meeting and said, I don't want to work with those people because I don't trust them. Or I just realized that I'm not a good fit for the culture of their organization or for who they are. You know, one of the things that's important in the entry phase is do not propose solutions for two reasons. You just met these people, and what makes you think that you would have a solution for them? And secondly, you're not getting paid yet. So don't offer solutions until you start to get paid. Your purpose there is to get enough information to write a proposal on which you will get paid. So what are the activities? Well, make the initial contacts, do a preliminary problem diagnosis. So you need to get enough information to have a sense of what's going on in the organization so that you can write a proposal. We've got the terms of reference that sometimes the client provides, or sometimes, and this is generally the only time we get paid in entry, is when they hire us to come in and help them write the terms of reference upon which other consultants and hopefully yourself can propose. And then, of course, there's the proposal and the contract. So some of the tools and techniques that we use, well, clearly to get into the initial meeting, we can use our personal networks. We can have referrals from past clients. They could be a past client that they're inviting us back again. Sometimes we're part of a consortium and we get invited to be part of that group and propose on our specialty within that consortium. There's other things like terms of reference, requests for proposal, statement of work that are sent around for us to respond to. Clearly, we need a lot of those interpersonal competencies, the ability to listen, to actively listen and ask questions when we don't understand, or paraphrase what someone's saying to say, I think I understand you saying this. We need really good skills around scoping and estimating. Proposal writing, of course, because we're judged on our written proposals that we put in front of the client. And then, of course, the various types of contracts that we need to have and put in place. Under the code of conduct, it's important that we put in writing what we're going to do for the client, what it's going to cost, what qualifications we have, and, of course, how much they're going to pay. So the deliverables, of course, are the proposal itself. And it depends on the complexity, the size, the risk involved in the potential contract, in the assignment. Whether we write something very simple like a letter of agreement, which is simply covering off the things that we need to cover off in a single page and say we can get started immediately. A letter of engagement where they can write to us and engage us on the basis of our proposal, or the letter of engagement's a slightly more extended letter of agreement, an LOU that can cover up to, say, $80,000 or $100,000 worth of work, or let me see, that would be 50,000, 60,000 euros. And all of these letters become the contract. So the LOU, where the client would sign it, as you see the signature line there, and send it back to you. And then, of course, there is a formal contract. And again, the higher the risk, the more detailed the contracting information is going to be. All right, so that's entry. Once we get the deal, the first thing we go in is, as the doctor here is looking at the x-rays, we do a diagnosis. So what's our purpose here in the diagnosis stage? Well, is to identify those critical areas in the client organization which need to be addressed. We're not just there to fix problems, but to get to the root cause of those problems so those problems stay fixed. So we are helping the client solve problems, but as I say, by getting to the root cause of what's causing those problems. Perhaps it's to capitalize on an opportunity. They want to expand, and we still do a diagnosis to figure out what's holding them back from moving into that expanded area. Sometimes we're just there to help a client survive. So, what are the steps? Well, we gather data, we analyze that data, and then we synthesize what needs to be addressed inside the client organization. So, we need to look at what are the problems, where are they located, how are they related to one another, how do we know which problems are really critical, where are they manifesting themselves, is it in a particular area within the organization, is it a symptom or a problem, and then of course what's causing that issue to manifest. And what's the difference between symptoms and problems? Well, symptom is the proof that there's a problem. All right, so that cash flow has been declining. So we got a cash flow problem. How do we know we have a cash flow problem? The symptom of it is it's been declining for 3 months in this area of operation. So as I say, the symptom is the proof of the problem. And by the way, all problems are factual. No analysis is required to identify a problem. Everybody in an organization generally knows what their problems are. So we're not adding value by identifying the problems. What we're adding value is understanding where is that problem rooted? What is its root cause? And sometimes, I'm called in to do work in human resources, and I find out the problems in production. That's what's causing this HR problem to manifest itself. And I'm going, look, I'm not an expert in production, but I know someone, a CMC, who is, and I think we need to get that root cause fixed first and then see what's left to clean up in HR. So that's really important. And finally, we're sort of talking about, what gives you confidence that this organization is capable of making the changes that it's going to need to make to deal with these problems? What strengths have you observed? And that's particularly important if we're just trying to help the client survive. Do we believe that they're ready to cut off their left leg if that's what it takes to survive? So, of course, how do we gather the data? There's a bunch of different tools and techniques. There's in the Milan Kuber 1998 edition had a brilliant management survey that looked at 5 of the 6 functional areas. The only one that they didn't cover off was ITIS, and I think that the ITIL framework does that excellently. Interviews and focus groups, which allows us to go in depth with asking follow-up questions, whereas surveys and questionnaires, you can gather a lot of information very quickly on a narrow range of topics. Of course, there's internal documents, external literature that you might do as look at for research. Maybe there's relevant reports from other clients. Has this problem been fixed before? Has it risen in the organization before? What did that consultant do to try and fix it? And then, of course, you have to situate the client in the milieu in which they operate, because no one is in a vacuum. So you use tools like STEEP or PESTLE, which allow you to understand all the other factors that are impacting the external threats and opportunities that are there. And then we can analyze the data using these sorts of tools like problem characteristic analysis, affinity analysis, Porter's 5 forces, the Kotler's 10 Ps or the old classic 10 Cs. Of course, now I think there's 7 Ps Erwin Kotler works University of Michigan, University of Chicago. Financial analysis and key ratios. What's going on financially? Flow chart. How is this process working? Where are the blockages? What is wrong with this process? And so flow charts and process flow diagrams help. Then we look at the HR area and look at IT. As I say, for IT, ITIL is an excellent framework for analyzing what's going on in that functional area. So we take a look at, even if we're just in there to solve a particular problem in a particular functional area, it's important that we look at the other areas and see what's going on, because they could be impacting and causing this situation to arise. And then how do we analyze the data, or how do we synthesize our conclusions? Right, we already talked about those. Oh, one other thing I wanted to talk about here is the facts. We start with the facts. We analyze facts. We don't analyze fiction. We don't analyze analysis. When someone says there's a lack of something, is that a fact? No, of course not. That's their opinion of what's going on. So the most powerful phrase in a management consultant's toolkit at this point is to say, what makes you say that? In other words, what are the facts that you're basing this opinion on? And that's what we need to get to. I mean, people say all the time there's a lack of communication. I'm going, what does that mean? What does communication look like in your organization? Why are you saying that I actually don't use why, because that gets into psychological mumbo jumbo. Their mother treated them poorly or something. So ask what? What makes you say that? How does communication happen in here or not happen? What are you observing that makes you say that? So again, we start with the facts, and then we go into the analysis, and we can use horizontal and vertical causal analysis, the 5 whys. Why is that happening? Why is that happening? Why is that happening? And ask it 5 times and go deeper to get to the root cause. Force field analysis, we're here, we want to go here. What's holding us back? The fishbone diagram, or Ikawara diagram, is that how you say it, Dwight? I think so, yeah. And of course, application of your own experience and judgment. And then we're going to develop clear what needs to be addressed statements. And that's the conclusion of our diagnosis. We go gather the data, pull out the facts, analyze them, go deeper, identify root causes, and also we might say a couple words about the client's ability to deal with the changes they're going to have to make. So the what needs to be addressed statements are clearly focused on the critical root causes, and these are the conclusion. This is the synthesis of our diagnostic report, is what needs to be addressed. And so here's an example. We need to put in place a common marketing plan which identifies blah, 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 blah. So this is a very focused conclusion that we've made in diagnosis that we need to solve in the next phase in the consulting process, which is action planning. So how are we doing there, Dwight? Do we have any questions in the background?
No, nothing coming up at this point. So sounds like you're being very clear.
All right. So yeah, participants, as Dwight mentioned at the outset, for those of you who've joined us later, do just type him up a question in the notes section, and I'll be happy to stop and answer it. Check in with Dwight every now and then. All right, so we're now on stage 3. Now that we've got to the root causes and we've identified the problems to be addressed, we've brought the client with us, we've identified the facts, we've shown them how we've done the analysis, and we've come to a set of conclusions. Based on that agreement, we will then move forward to solve those problems. So what's the purpose of this stage? Well, to creatively identify alternative solutions that the client can implement to solve their critical issues. And the key here is alternative solutions. We don't just come up with one solution. This is what we get paid the big bucks for. Anybody can come up with one solution, but can we provide the client with choice to say, you could do it this way or you could do it this way? I recommend this one, but it is your choice. We are the advisors to the client. We don't tell them what to do. We show them that there are different ways to solve their problems. So we start with these activities. We start the creative process so that we can come up with strong alternatives to solve the client's problems. I mean, what happens if you only come up with one solution? What if the client doesn't like it? Lights go off, you go home. Thanks very much for coming out, but the game's over. So we come up with some good, strong alternatives, and then we identify how ready is this client to change. I remember one of my early assignments, young management consultant, I went into a client, and he's got my report in his hands, and I'm really proud of this report. The client looks at it, he goes, Kevin, this is brilliant. Brilliant. Then he tossed it to the side. And I went, what? What? And he looked at me and said, it was brilliant. He said, but my people don't have the ability to implement that. They don't have the skills. They don't have the readiness. They don't have the vision that you have to implement this. So that's why we assess change readiness and absorptive capacity. Does the client have the ability to absorb the amount of change that we're recommending? Because if they don't, then our solution is of no use to them. That has to be implementable. So that's why we understand change readiness before we make our final recommendation of the alternatives to the client. And then we're going to present these alternatives to the client. We're going to say this one is the one we recommend because, and a number of ideas. And then our synthesis of action planning is to give the client an overview. So we're going to do a high-level work breakdown structure on our recommendations and give them an overview of where they're going to be living for the next 6 to 18 months so that they understand the implications of our recommended solutions. But again, then we say, it's now your choice. Do you want this one or this one? We've recommended A. We believe A will solve your problem. B will solve your problem too. It's not like we can go, hey, there's this great solution over here, and then there's other solution that's not very good. So what if they pick this one? Well, you're not going to put a stupid alternative in front of a client, because if they pick it, well, we all know what happens then. All right, so what are some of our tools here? Brainstorming, reverse brainstorming. Have you ever tried that, reverse brainstorming? So you go in Monday morning, you go, hey, we're going to brainstorm some solutions to this problem. And they all go, look, dude, it's Monday morning. I'm not very creative on Monday morning. I haven't had my third coffee yet. So you go, what? And if all you've got is one tool, again, lights go off, you go home. If you don't have something else in your backpack to pull out, it's over. But reverse brainstorming, so instead of brainstorming improvements in customer service today, we are going to brainstorm how to get rid of our clients and give them terrible customer service. So people go, wow, we could spill the coffee on them. We could just ignore them for 20 minutes so that maybe they'll leave. All right. So once you get people talking like that and laughing, and that's when the creative juices start flowing. And then you say, okay, how can we take some of these ideas and improve customer service? And that's reverse brainstorming. There's brain writing, which is silent brainstorming. That's if you've got a personality that's overwhelming, or you've got a lot of people and some loud voices in there. It's a great way to involve not extroverts, introverts, is brain writing. 4 pluses and a wish is when you take an idea and you try to add to it and then say, well, here's what I don't like about it. So you turn that into a wish and have the group help solve it. 20 answers, brainstorming by yourself, which is like writing out 20 answers to a question. Attribute listing, forced relationships, morphological analysis. These are all tools that we talk about in the actual program, and we get you to use them during the program. Here's some others: synectics, scenario planning, affinity analysis, process flow diagrams. We use them to find issues. We can also use it to redesign a process. And we go, okay, if we were designing this process again from scratch, how might we do it? Six thinking hats, breakthrough thinking, lateral thinking, and the scamper technique. We go into all of these, and I provide toolkits for people to cover all of these tools as part of this program. So as I said, there's that assessing change readiness. What's the client's absorptive capacity? We provide a number of change readiness assessments. We understand the on-freeze change freeze framework that can help us unfold a project in stages. We talk about resilience and how important building resilience is into the organization. The commitment continuum of individuals and the 5 F's, friends, family, fence sitters, fighters, and foes. Where do we put our attention? How do we use these people? How do we assess these people? What sort of information do we need to get from these different groups in order to be successful? And of course, there's the teams that we have to deal with. And then it's decision-making time. So we can use pro-con, force field analysis, multi-voting, nominal group technique. We can do some financial analysis and break-even projections. Is this going to be a good solution? We can come up with some criteria to evaluate the solutions. Now, one thing that you have to do is decide before you create the solutions, you have to pick your decision-making technique. See, because if you pick it afterwards, then there's a fight over which one is going to favor my solution. And that creates problems. So if you agree in advance, what are the criteria? Then when you get to, then it's a fair fight because you've already set the criteria in advance of what is going to be an acceptable solution. And then, of course, there's prioritization and decision matrices that allow you to identify which of these solutions is going to need to get started first if there's a series of solutions. And then, of course, we bring your own experience to bear and produce an integrated set of final recommendations. Now, we're not done there because what we need to do is break down those recommendations into some supporting detail. As I say, a high-level work breakdown structure, and then parse them out over time and identify, as I said, this big implementation overview so the client understands where they're going to be living for the next 6 to 18 months. They understand the implications and the blood and treasure and effort they're going to need to put into implementing your recommendations. Then we ask them for a decision. Dwight, over to you.
Yes, we do have a comment and a question. But before that, you did mention on one of the slides, you're talking about several of the different tools that those are covered in more detail in the Full Essentials program.
Yes, I have an entire filing cabinet of helpful information that I provide to all participants, and it includes toolkits and explanations of how all these tools work. And then as the way that the program is designed is that there's a case study, and over the 6 sessions, the team works virtually together to solve the case. So you work through each stage and get to apply the tools, which are explained, as I said, in the toolkit.
Wonderful. Excellent. So I have a comment that I think it would be helpful for you to comment on. And the comment is that it's around data analysis and process improvement because they're so heavily influenced by technology. So even though the consultant is not being hired for their expertise in data analysis and understanding the technology per se, it's important in order to be able to work in the realm of the client. So because of the complexity of work environments nowadays, what is the level of skills that the consultant needs to have in terms of technology?
Well, it's interesting. We need to understand all of the functional areas. That's part of what being a certified management consultant is that we need this breadth of knowledge across all of the functional areas. And of course, one of the functional areas is information technology and technology. Clearly, technology and the digital age is a key part of business today, and it's going to transform businesses. There's a lot of disruption going on. I mean, that's another whole lecture. And actually, I spoke as a keynote. I gave a keynote address to the Australian National Conference in October around how we as management consultants need to get in sync with the digital age. Not only do we recommend to our clients what needs to be done, but we need to get our own act together in becoming digitized. So yeah, we never stop learning. And that's one thing. You don't get your CMC and get to like say, hey, I'm a CMC. You need to continue to invest in your ongoing education so that you can bring value to the client. So you need to understand what's going on in that client's field and what technologies are disrupting and or assisting them to be more successful.
Excellent, thanks. And here's the question, and this is with reference to the entry stage. How deep do we need to dig in to understand the real problem and prepare the proposal? You had mentioned that, gave the example of going into HR and the client needed to solve a production problem. So do you need to understand this in the entry phase, doing preliminary problem diagnosis?
Root causes are not going to be very obvious during the preliminary interviews with the client. What you're trying to do is sort of gather enough data to understand symptoms and problems that are coming up there, and with your own experience sort of go, and that's the other thing. In writing a proposal, there's strategies and approaches to writing a proposal, and we talk about questions that you ask, what data do you need to collect in the entry interview, so you have enough to come up with a preliminary diagnosis about what's going on, so that you can write a proposal to go in and dig a little deeper and find out if your theory is sort of like setting out a thesis, is that you have a theory about what's going on inside the organization. So you set out a proposal to prove whether or not that's correct. So it's only when we get into the organization and get to ask more questions and go deeper. And I've been in proposals or in situation assignments where I've written a proposal for one thing, and as I get into the organization, I'm not saying the client lied to me, but they didn't know what they didn't know. Yeah. And so once I got in there, I went, oh, whoa, time out. This is a scope change. What we've discovered is it's not this problem, but it's a deeper problem over here. And that's what I said. I've been invited in to do HR work. I thought I was going in to do HR work. And it's in the diagnosis stage that I discovered the deeper problem that was in production. So we do our best. That's why it's called a preliminary diagnosis. It's a theory that we come up with based on all the good questions we've asked.
Okay. Another comment just popped up here, so I'll give you this one. Another comment on the acquisition of the engagement: beware of contingent fees, at least in my opinion. That usually is a warning sign for my own risk management.
Yeah, that's something that we deal with in ethics, because, and I do address it in the course that we have on ethics, because we do have something, I believe, in our code of conduct that talks about how we set fees. And right, contingent fees are, it's problematic. But again, that's another whole discussion. We are at a level of sophistication today that we can work on contingent fees. However, there's a whole set of revelations that we have to put in writing and discuss with the client. Like, how are we going to measure this, over what time period? What are the risks? What do I do? What do you do in order to achieve the results? So it can be covered in the way we write our proposals, but you're right. Whoever mentioned that, it's a risk that you have to be aware of. Okay. All right, I better keep going. Right, implementation. So this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where the client. So we've gone in. Number one, in the entry stage, we've signed a contract to take on the assignment. And again, we don't solve problems in entry. We solve problems while we're getting paid. So first we identify what are the problems and what is the root cause of them. And we get the client to agree on that root cause. And that's what we're solving. Then we go into action planning and provide them with alternatives with our recommendations of how to solve those problems. And now the rubber hits the road. Our job in implementation is not just to write a project plan, but also to go in and actually assist the client. We have particular expertises that we can bring to the assignment. Maybe we have other people on our team or within our organization or that we know that can help during this implementation phase. So we're writing a proposal to help them implement. And there's two parts to implementation. There's the project plan and there's the change management plan. And without change management, this doesn't work. So what's the purpose of implementation? Well, this, to some people who are paying attention, may look a lot like what I said we do in diagnosis. The purpose of diagnosis is to identify those critical issues in the organization that needs to be fixed in order for the client to solve its problems, take advantage of new opportunities, or survive. And that's what, so implementation is the actual change that needs to be made. By the way, almost all consulting assignments are change assignments. We don't go in and go, hey, status quo, everything's fine, right? If they paid us $40,000 to come up with a diagnosis of what their problems are, our solution is not going to be just carry on what you're doing. So we are implementing change. So on one side, we have implementation as project management. So that's one wing of the plane. And this is getting the work done. And this is classic project management stuff, PMBOK, basic tools and techniques, you know, project charter, responsibilities, time phase budget, work breakdown, resource breakdown, risk management, change control, working papers, and that's very important, the working papers. We need to keep those in order. Project networks, you know, things like knowledge transfer. And then you'll notice off to the left there, I've got pro-con, tree diagrams, flow charts, for and against, because sometimes we don't have the plan out to the nth degree. There's some little things that we may run into a blockage, so we have to make some decisions again. There's monitoring and feedback, training and development, the communications plan. These are all standard project management things. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that in the program because project management is a course that's also required to become a certified management consultant in most institutes. And I think that you guys require it at CMC-GI, that you have to have a background in project management or a course in project management, because not only is the consulting assignment a project, but implementation is a project within that assignment. What we really bring, is change management. And that's the real strength of a management consulting, is supporting the client staff to make the changes. So not only have we assessed change readiness and the absorptive capacity in coming up with our solutions, but we're there to support the client team making the changes. We don't just say, okay, here's a computer program. Hey, just put it on your laptop. It's all going to work. Fine. Just like that. We know that doesn't work. Why have most major IT implementations failed over the last 40 years? Lack of change management. Lack of understanding that people just don't snap their fingers and implement a new technology. So we need to develop a planned approach to change in order to minimize the negative impact for employees and the culture and overall morale. So that means paying attention to all the small things. It means paying attention and supporting the people through the change. So some of our techniques and tools are understanding that leadership and sponsorship is essential. Project management and change management. It's a three-legged stool. If a leg is missing on a three-legged stool, what happens? Tilt, you fall over and you fall off the chair. So there are tools and techniques, and sorry, that Cotter's 8 steps should say updated 2014. Cotter, who wrote a brilliant piece on change and his 8 steps in 1994, updated it 20 years later with some new understanding around change. And all of these models and approaches are explained and in a toolkit and provided as part of the training. And then we get to termination. So that's basically implementation, is helping the client implement the solutions we've recommended. And when I started management consulting, back in the horse and buggy days, one of the things that we did do is we wrote reports. We said, here's your recommendation. So I'm just going to put my phone in a drawer here. Here's your recommendation. Good luck. Here's our report. Here's the implementation plan. Just go implement this. Well, we recognize that didn't work. Clients were failing. So who gets blamed? The management consultant. So what did we do? We began to understand that we needed to help our client implement our solutions. And so implementation is a huge part of what management consultants do today in supporting the client to implement our recommendations. All right, any questions there, Dwight, on that last one we went through?
No, we're good.
All right. Now, this is fascinating. When I get to this stage, everybody goes, whoa, I never realized how important termination was. So why is it important? Well, you ever went out to dinner, had a lovely meal, and at the end of the meal, you ask the waiter for a cup of decaf, or waiter or waitress. You want some decaf. It's late. Caffeine gives you jitters. You stay up all night. And what they do is they bring you out this decaf that's been sitting on the burner for 2 hours. We all know what that tastes like, right? How does that make you feel about the meal you just? Everything could have been perfect up to then. The service could have been great. The food could have been great. Your company was fun. The waiter, waitress was fun. And then they bring you out this bad cup of coffee. Does that affect your tip? Mm-hmm. Did it affect what you tell other people? You might forget all the rest of the stuff. Say, yeah, look, the food was, and then they brought out this terrible cup of coffee. You don't want to be that bad cup of coffee. As a management consultant, termination is essential because, this may be the last thing you do for the client ever. How they feel about you at the end and how you wrap things up professionally in a package with a bow on it is whether or not they're going to recommend you to other people. You can't just say, hey, hey, it was fun, see you later, and the client goes, don't let the door hit you on the butt on the way out. Yeah, here's my bill, see ya. Losing interest is not on the list. You need to finish up with the same vim and vigor that you went in there. Hey, new clients, new people, new money. You need to have that same level of enthusiasm as you wrap up the assignment. And the other thing is, if you've been there for a little while, the client might need reminding about what you've done for them. I had a situation where I worked for a client for 18 months. At around the 15-month mark, the executive director got changed and a new person came in. And they said, what have you been doing? What have you been doing for 15 months? Did you just look this up on the internet? Myself and the other managing directors were just appalled that that's what this person thought. They didn't understand where the organization had been when we started. So that's why termination is so important, is we go back and we remind the client of some of the benefits that we've brought. And we're going to talk about the 6 dimensions of benefit that we bring. We're going to talk about the type of evaluation that we do at the end so that we provide the client with proof of the value that they've gotten. We write a termination report. We do an evaluation. We give the client feedback on how they could better leverage consultants in the future. We plan for withdrawal. We don't just hey, see you later. We have to, we may pull out 6 months into a 12-month implementation. How do we make sure that that implementation stays on track? We talk about follow-up. We do a team debriefing. How did we do? What did we learn? Who learned new skills so that we might bring them into another assignment? We put our working papers in order because those are the proof that we did the job completely and ethically. And of course, we invoice and we celebrate. Follow-up's an interesting one, and if we plan for withdrawal properly and carry out our withdrawal meetings properly, the client's going to tell us everything we need to know to talk about follow-up. See, it's way easier to go back and work with a previous client than to go dig up a new client. So we might follow up on implementation events. After you leave, you might say, hey, I'm willing to come back, and you can put a price on this or you cannot. And then we discussed that in the course. I'm going to come back for the next 3 months and sit in on your implementation meetings. Just quietly, I'll sit in the back. If you have any questions, you can ask me. If I see some problems, I'll jump in. If there's problems or some new problems have come up, who are they going to think about? The person sitting in the room, providing them with some advice. So you could also follow up on elements of the plan. So if you've been there for 6 months, it's a 12-month plan. Maybe you had planned to be part of some of the elements that are in that final 6 months. So you can always say to the client, look, you've asked me to leave, I'm withdrawing, but you might want to bring me back for these things. And then you give the client a smorgasbord, opportunities to bring you back. I finished some project management training for an organization. And as I listened to them, I gave them, like, here's all the elements that you need to be a good project management tools, techniques, processes. And I heard them talking. I said, well, geez, we don't have that here at this organization. Made a note to myself. And at the end of it, I gave the client a list of 13 areas that they were deficient in. The client said, yep, I got the same list. And as soon as we get our budget for next year, we want to solve 4 of these. I just finished 5 years working with that client. Follow-up. The other thing is a follow-up retainer. Look, give me $5,000 and call me when you need me if you have a problem. That's one way. Or follow-up post-implementation. You may have, in the implementation, opened up new opportunities. So after they've implemented these changes, there may be some new platforms, programs, whatever, that they need follow-up. And so you can go back. The other thing you can do is at the end of the implementation, go in and do a lessons learned with them. Great way. Spend a day with the client. Again, I believe that you don't give away things for free because you get what you pay for. But at the same time, it could be some great marketing for your next gig. Follow-up, really important part of termination. Okay, so I think I'm going to wrap up on time here. Here's the bottom line on the 5-stage process that you learn through the Essentials of Management Consulting. And by the way, I didn't make these up, these 5 stages. I helped CMC-Canada design this course. I've read a lot of books on management consulting. There's anywhere from 3 to 7 stages. These 5 made the most sense. And even when you're talking about those 3 to 7, the activities are the same. I like the way this one broke down. I met this is based on International Labor Organization book by Milan Kuber called Management Consulting, an Introduction. I shared a stage with Milan in Vienna in 2005. He was speaking at the same conference in Vienna. I asked him about termination too, because I go, he's German, right? Termination. We end the project. Okay, that's cool. Termination. Very precise German. Anyway, the bottom line here is that these 5 stages are accepted worldwide. So this is a level, this shows our professionalism. We have a quality, repeatable process. It's comprehensive. It covers the entire the entire beginning to end of a consulting assignment. It's repeatable. We can use it again and again. And clients may not understand how management consultants work, so it gives us a professional tool to go and say, here's how we approach an assignment. Here's what we want to do all of these stages with you. The client may, well, we just want to do diagnosis right now. That's fine, but here's what diagnosis leads to. It brings results. If you follow this process, it's guaranteed to provide results to the client. And the tools and techniques, that's the other thing about the tools and techniques. I talk about the fact it's like having a quiver of arrows, and you pull out the right arrow at the right time. And finally, it's about your professional reputation, right? You build a reputation by having a quality, repeatable process with a series of tools and techniques. So you're not a one-trick pony.
Just a couple of comments have come up, Kevin. Otto was reinforcing on the termination that often the client doesn't understand or forgets the original scope and extent of services, and kind of expects you as the consultant to be hanging around. So from the consultant's perspective, it's really important to be crisp about that.
Well, and that's what we talk about in writing the proposal, and
Exactly.
and that's why this 5-stage process this is how it works. But scoping is a very important part of writing a proposal.
Yeah.
Yes.
I also wanted to reinforce the 5-stage process as a global process, and recognized worldwide is the passing of the ISO 2700 in June of this year, which does enshrine these 5 stages in that process as well.
Excellent.
And Marina asked the question, what's the fee for the upcoming course? So I think you have a closing slide on that, so you can cover that off when you get to that, please.
I heard this guy speak at a conference, and this is brilliant. He said, all of the processes are perfect for the results that you are getting. So that's, the nice thing about this process is it's repeatable, it's professional, it gets results. All right, so I think we've asked all the questions. What's the fee for the upcoming course? I'd have to look that up. It's in, just give me 1 second here. I don't have it right on the tip of my tongue. So is that for ethics or for the consulting process?
For the essentials, I believe.
All right.
Yeah, it is for the process.
Thanks, Marina.
All right, just let me look at so after this, we're going to send everyone a brochure on this. Oh, that's not the oh, here we go. And the fee is approximately €1,000 for and as I say, it's 6 sessions. Each session is 2 hours. And you're provided with the Zoom platform to have meetings as a team, apply the tools and techniques that you're provided. As I say, there's an entire filing cabinet worth of information, toolkits, readings on each one of the 5 phases in the consulting process. There's templates for client reports and client communications. There's a whole template for teamwork, building team charters, and there's a whole section on change management and the various tools and techniques for change management. So each one of those sessions, so there's an introduction and a welcome and how to use the platform training session, and then we go through the 5 phases of the consulting process, and those are the dates there. And the registration link will be sent to you after this. All right. And of course, the other one that is required that everyone in the organization take is the Principles of Ethical Conduct. The next session for that is February 5th and 6th. It's 2 3-hour sessions online again. And we'll send you the link to register, plus the e-brochure that talks about the price and how to sign up for that. So, thanks for coming out today, for those who are here live and for those who see this afterwards. I hope you enjoyed the hour. And I see one other question there. Do we have a following session? I think we've got some tentative dates in April for the next session. We sort of try to advertise it one at a time. Anyway, thanks again. I enjoyed being here, Dwight. Over to you. You're on mute. We're not going to hear you if you don't take yourself off mute.
Well, you can see me talking.
I can see the mouth.
Very much for an excellent session. Thank you, Kevin. And I see that thanks are coming up on the screen as well from participants. So thank you very much for your time and for this wonderful introduction to this great course.
All right. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Look forward to seeing you online.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for your participation. Take care.